Okay, so welcome everyone to this channel named Geeks for Geeks School, and today we are going to design this beautiful social media login page. And as you can see, there are some social media icons which are present on the left side of this web page. And if the person want to enter the login credentials manually, he can make use of this part. Okay, so basically this section over here is divided into four different parts. The first part consists of this text over here right on the top, and then we have this part which has three different buttons, one with login Facebook, then the second one is for if the person want to log in with Twitter, he can make use of this button, and for this Google Plus we have one more option. And then there is this third section in which there are two input boxes and a login button, and then there is one more section in which the sign up and forgot password is getting reflected, and right on the top is our company's name. Fine, so this is what we are going to design today using the basic HTML and CSS coding. Let's dive into the web lab platform and check out how can we design this beautiful web page. So for accessing the web lab, we need to first hit this create button. Automatically this cascading menu is going to open up, and then you can visit this view all projects option. So this is going to redirect you on one of the beautiful pages of code.org. Come down and hit this view full list option, and this is where you're going to find this web lab option. Hit this for accessing the web lab environment. So this is what you're going to come across. Now this is a workspace where you can define the different HTML codes for making this beautiful web page. So the first thing that I would like to do over here is let's create a division section. Fine, and then we can have a class for this division. Let's say let's make use of this name container. Fine, and I am going to close it over here. Fine, so we have now a division section. Now inside this we are going to make use of this form tag, because it is a kind of form that we have to design, right? So let's make use of this form tag, and I'm closing it over here. Then let's define the ending point also of this form tag. Okay, I think we have missed one thing. We missed this thing, the code that we need to define, that we need to get this Geeks for Geeks getting reflected right on the top over here on this stage area. So what we can do, we can make use of simple header tags, and then we can put this text Geeks for Geeks in between these header tags. So this is how it is going to look like. Fine. Now let's come inside this form section and define a division. Let's say let's have a class also for this division section. So I'm going to have a class with name row. Okay, and then we can close it over here. Fine. Now inside this division section, for which the class name is row, I am going to make use of this header tag h2. Okay, and now we will define this text in between this header tag. So now this is how you can get this login with social media or manually text on the stage area. Now if you want to get it reflected in the center, what you can do, you can make use of inline styling also. Now how can you define inline styling? So you guys can make use of this style named attribute, and let's make use of this property text align. Fine, now we need to align it in the center, right? So that is the reason we need to pass this value center. Okay, now the same thing we can do for this Geeks for Geeks also, because it is also getting reflected right in the center of the web page. So I am going to copy this whole code and place it over here for this H1. Fine, so this is what you're going to see as an output on the stage area. Okay, now we are going to define a division section, and this time we are going to have a different class for this division section. So I'm making use of v1. Fine, now what is happening over here? See, if I will shrink this window, so in place of that or, in place of this or, automatically or sign in manually, this is the text which is going to get reflected over here on this web page. And if I will now enlarge this, enlarge the size of the web page, automatically it will change to or. Fine, so I'm going to define a separate HTML code for this or thing and a separate division section for this or sign in manually. Fine, so first of all, I am defining the HTML code for that or, which is coming in between these two sections over here. So this is the division section I am going to make use of. Now let's close this division section over here. Now inside this division section, let's make use of span tag. Okay, and for this one also we are going to make use of a different class. So v1 dash, let's say inner text. Fine, and then we can close it. Now we can define or over here and close the span tag, because the span is also a container element, right? So make sure that you have defined the end point also and the starting point also for this tag named span. Fine. So this this division section with class name v1 consists of a span tag which we have defined for this or thing or text. Now let's come outside this division section and divide this row into columns. Okay, now the first column that I am going to define, let's first make use of this division tag, and also I'm going to define a class for this. So let's make use of this column name class, and I am closing it over here. Great. Now there are different buttons which are visible to us over here on this, in this second section. This one is the first section and this is the second section which we are going to define the HTML code for now. So there are three different buttons. For each button we are going to make use of an anchor tag. Okay, so let's go back on this HTML file, and in between this division section I am going to define the required code for getting all these three colorful buttons reflected on the stage area. So this is the anchor tag I am going to make use of. Let's for href, let's pass this hashtag value, because I don't want the user to get redirected on some other thing. So that is the reason I'm putting this hashtag over here. After that we can let's define a class also for this, so that we can use the same for customizing the button. So the first one is Facebook's button, right? So that is the reason the class name I've defined over here is FABTN, Facebook button. Now I am closing it. Okay, and then we can write down login with Facebook, the way it is written over here on this button. So L is capital, W is small, and F is in capital. Okay, Facebook. Great. And now we guys can close the anchor tag. Okay, so now we are done with defining the required HTML code for this first button. Let's now copy this anchor tag and whatever text we have defined in between these two anchor tags and place it over here. Okay, so the second button that we are going to define the code for is Twitter. Login with Twitter. So now this login with Twitter is also visible to us over here on the stage area. Let's now copy this whole thing and paste it over here. So this one is going to be for this Google Plus. Let's write down Google Plus like this over here. Okay, so now we have all the three required hyperlinks on the stage area, and we have enclosed these three hyperlinks in between this division section for which the class name is column. So this first division section, which has this class name row, has this as a first column. Now we are going to define the code for this second column. So this is going to be the first column, and this is going to be the this is going to be the second column. This one, or sign in manually, and this one is going to be the third column. So what we can do, we can again copy this whole thing, okay, and the point where this division section for which the class name is called is ending, we can paste the code right below this division section. Fine, and for this one the class name is going to be call only, and inside this we are going to have one more division, and let's define a class also for this division so that we can make use of it for customizing that or sign in manually thing. So hide MD, hide material design. So this is the class I have defined for this division section, and I am going to close it over here. Fine, okay, and then this is an anchor tag. We don't require this anchor tag anymore. What we can do, we can make use of this paragraph tag, and then in between these paragraph tags we can write down or sign in manually, or sign in manually. Fine, so as you can see, let's refresh this window. So as you can see, this text is also now visible to us over here on the stage area. Right, now instead of defining a separate division for these three things, this input box, these two input boxes and this login button, we can have these three things inside this division section for which the class name is column. Okay, so how can we do that? We can make use of this input tag, and let's have a type of text because the user can type text over here in these fields, right? That is the reason I have defined text as a type for this input field. Now we can define a name also for this if you want, user name. Let's close this input tag. Fine, okay, we don't require this, I think. Yeah, now it is perfectly fine. Is there anything which we are missing? This one is for division. This is perfectly fine. Okay, and then after this, see, initially we are able to see this username getting reflected inside this input box. So how can we get this thing? We can make use of this placeholder property, and let's pass this value user name for this placeholder property, and I would like it to be mandatory for the user to key in something over here. If without putting anything over here in these two fields, if I hit this login button, so I would like a message like this to get reflected on this web page. Fine, so for doing that, what we can do, we can make use of this required keyword. So it is going to help us in getting the required output. Okay, so we are done with defining the required code for this first input box, and we are able to see it over here on the stage area. Let's now copy this whole thing and place it just below this input field. So this time it is going to be for the password, right? So the type is going to be password, because I don't want that if the user types here anything, it should be visible to the other person. So automatically whatever he's going to type over here, it will get converted into these kind of dots. So this is what you can pass the value for this type attribute if you want to get the required output. And here also you can change it to password. Then placeholder field, I would like to see this text getting reflected in the placeholder field, and rest everything is going to remain the same. Now the last thing that we have to define is this HTML code for this button, right? So for that we can again make use of this input tag, and let's now define this submit as a type for this input, and value is going to be login. Okay, I think that is perfectly fine. So this is where this second column is starting, and then here it is. Okay, I haven't defined the ending division tag, right? Okay, and besides that, for here we need to make use of equal to instead of that colon. So now we are done with defining the required HTML code for two input boxes and a button, and everything is visible to us over here on the stage area also. Fine. Now what we can do, just after the point where this division is ending, we can define another division section for this footer thing where this sign up and forgot password is getting reflected. So this time I am going to make use of a different class for this division section. Let's have a class name with this container, button container, and we can close it over here. Fine. Now in between these two division tags, we can define one more division tag with class name row. Now why am I doing this? Because this last part is divided into two different parts. So this sign up thing is going to come in one column, and this forgot password I'm going to keep it in another column. Fine. So the way we have defined two different divisions with class name column for this row over here, for this row over here, in the same way we are going to define two different columns for this division section also, for which the class name is row. So for that we can copy this thing. First of all, we need to define the ending division tag, right? Let's copy this thing and place it over here. Let's replace it with this name column. Okay, this is perfectly fine. Now inside this division section, which has this class name column, let's make it call, the class name that we defined for these two division sections. So I'm going to keep it the same for this division also. Fine. So the thing that we need to get reflected over here is the sign up, right? Now it is a hyperlink. Why I'm saying that it is a hyperlink? Because it is a clickable object. For this we can make use of this anchor tag, and H for this href I am defining hash, because I don't want the user to get redirected to any other thing. And let's make use of this inline styling for defining the color of the text. So I would like it to get reflected in white color. Besides this, I would like to define a class also for this anchor tag. So the class name is going to be btn. Fine. And now we can write down sign up. like this, and we can close the anchor tag over here. Fine. So this is the first column. Now let's copy this whole division section and place it over here. So this is going to be the second column in which I would like to see forgot password getting reflected. For doing that, we just have to replace this whole text with forgot password, and that's what you will get to see when you'll refresh this window. Just a second. So login with these buttons are visible to me right now. Let's open it on a bigger window and see what is the output we are going to get. Okay, so these are the things which are currently visible to us over here on this web page. Fine. Division section. Okay. You know why I'm not able to see this sign up and forgot password? It's just because uh, the color of these text is white. Fine. So if I will make it black, now I will be able to see both the things getting reflected over here on the stage area. So let it be black only for now. Once we are done with defining the required CSS code, uh, we are going to change the color back to white. Fine. Okay, so we are now done with defining the required HTML code, and as you can see, all the elements are also visible to us at present on the stage area. Let's now come on this CSS file and eliminate everything whatever is there by default. The first thing that I'm going to do is let's define the box sizing. So I would like to have a border box kind of view. Okay, now we can define the code for customizing this division section, inside which the form elements are coming, and all these elements, these buttons, these input boxes, and this button is coming. So let's do that. So how can we access the elements? We just have to write down the name of the class and make sure that you have placed this dot before the class name. You can place these curly brackets, and then let's define a position. So I'm going to have a relative position because this time I am going to make it mobile friendly. Let's now define some border radius. So I would like to have a border radius of 5 pixels. Okay, and then background color. So let's try and find out the code of this background color. For doing that, the simple thing that you can do is you can make use of the color picker tool, which you can easily find in the game lab on code.org. Okay, so this is the code.org environment, and for accessing the game lab you need to hit this create button, and this is a cascading menu you're going to come across. Now you can visit this game lab. So this is the game lab environment. Now you can find the color picker tool in this animation area. Hit this new animation tab, which is going to redirect you on this beautiful animation library, and then you can make use of this draw your own option. So you're going to come across this beautiful empty frame, and then you can make use of this print screen option for taking the print screenshot of this web page and paste it over here. Fine. For getting the background color of this area, we can make use of this color picker tool, and click on this area. So this is where you're going to see the background color code of this area where you clicked with the help of this color picker tool. Let's go back on the code.org environment and paste that color code over here. Okay, so as you can see, the color of this background has now changed, and it is identical to the one which is getting reflected in the background of this section. So it is perfectly fine. Now we are going to define some padding also, so that we can have some space in between these components and this section. So let's have this padding values 20 pixel, 0, then 30 pixel, and then 0. So now when you refresh this window, this is what you will get to see as an output. So as you can see, there is a space which has got created over here in between this header part and this border. Now let's define the code for customizing the view of the input field. So we have made use of this input tag for defining the input components over here on the stage area. And then we have this class named button for these anchor tags. Have we defined this button for anything else? Let's check it out. Okay, so it is only for these social media buttons. So how can you access both the things? You just have to place a comma and then you can write down the name of the class. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to have is the width. I would like it to cover the entire width of the page. That is the reason passing this 100% value for this width. So this is what you're going to get is an output. Let's define something for the padding part. So padding, let's make it none. And border also, I don't want to define anything for the border. Let's make use of this border radius for getting some circular borders. So for border radius we can have this value 4 pixels. I think this is going to give us the correct output. See, so now we are able to see these round borders getting reflected for these input boxes and for this button, right? Let's now define something for the margin part. So 5 pixel and 0. Opacity, I would like to have an opacity of 0.85, so it is going to dim the color of all the input boxes and the buttons. What kind of display? We would like to have a inline block kind of display. Okay, and then we can define something for the font size also. See, this is what you're going to get as an output. So it's an inline block kind of display which is visible to us over here. Fine. Now we can define some font size. So let's have a font size of 17 pixel. Then line height is going to be, let's say, 20 pixel. Fine. Then we can have something for the text decoration part also. So I don't want to see any kind of line below these buttons. So that is the reason defining none for this text decoration. So this is what you will get to see when you'll refresh the code. So the line which was earlier visible to us getting reflected below these buttons, it is now no more visible to us. Okay, now we are going to define something for the hover property. So if the user will bring the cursor on any of the input buttons, I would like for this input also we can define on, and also for this button also we can define the hover property. So I would like the opacity to change to 1. So initially it is going to be 0.85, but when the user will bring the cursor over these buttons, so the opacity is going to change to 1. Fine. Now we are going to define the code for customizing, these buttons, the Facebook button, the Twitter button, and the Google Plus button. But before this, we are going to define different classes for these 3 buttons. So for this first button, we have this FA and BTN. Then for this second button, we are going to have, let's have Twitter. Fine. So these are the 2 classes which we have for this text login with Twitter. And then for this Google one, we are going to define Google and BTN. Let's come back on this style.css file and define the required code for customizing the view of the 3 social media buttons. So for accessing the Facebook button, we can make use of this FB class, and make sure that you have placed this dot before this FB. Let's change the background color first. So I would like to have a background color of, now how can we find the background color of this button? For doing that, we can take a snapshot and paste it over here using the Control and V key together. So this is what you're going to get as an output over here on this animation workspace of GameLab. Let's make use of this color picker tool to find out the background color of this Facebook button. So we just have to click on this button, and automatically the color code of this color is going to get reflected over here in this input box. Let's go back on this code.org platform and paste the color code over here for this background color. And the text I would like to see on this button should be in white. So that is the reason passing white value for this color property, and when you refresh the window, you will be able to see the desired output. Why we are not able to get the output over here on this stage area? Let's check it out. What is the code that we have defined over here for? Okay, so the class name for this Facebook button is FA. Let's change it to FB. I think now we'll be able to see the desired result. Yes, now the look of this button has changed. Background color of this button is now of blue. Let's make use of the same code for customizing the appearance of the Twitter button. So I'm going to make use of this class named Twitter, and background color is going to be this. Copying the code and placing it over here in place of this code we had used for Facebook button, and rest everything is going to remain the same. As you can see, the output is visible to us over here on the stage area. Let's copy this whole thing and place it over here. This time we are going to define the code for customizing the appearance of this Google Plus button. What is the background color? Let's check out the color code for this background color. Using this color picker tool, we can easily do it. So this is the color code. Let's paste it over here for this background color property, and see, we are able to get the required output over here on the stage area. Okay, now we are going to define the code for customizing the view of the input button, for which we have this type as submit. Okay, so I'm talking about this login button. Fine. So what is happening when I'm bringing my cursor over this button? Background color, the opacity is changing, right? Fine. So this is what we are going to define the code for now. But before that, we need to customize the appearance of this login button. Now, how can we access this login button? See, the type of this button is submit, and we have made use of this input tag for getting this button over here on the stage area. So what we can do, we can access the button using this input keyword, and let's define this type named submit over here, and then we can put these curly brackets. Okay, so what is the background color? Let's define the code for this background color property first. So we can get the background color of this button we need to first take the snapshot of it, or what we can do, we can make use of the print screen option and paste this screenshot we have taken in this paint software. Let's now make use of this selection tool and copy this area and paste it over here in the animation workspace of GameLab. Now let's make use of this color picker tool and find out the color code of this background color of the button. So this is the color code. Let's copy it and place it over here for this background color property. Now when you'll refresh the stage area, you will be able to see the required changes getting reflected over here. Now what is the color of the text? So the color of the text of this button is white. Let's copy this code and place it over here inside this curly bracket area. And when I'm bringing my cursor over this button, so it is changing to a pointer kind of thing. Now how can we get this kind of effect? We can make use of this property named cursor, and let's make use of this value pointer. Okay, so now when I'm bringing my cursor over this button, so the cursor is changing, it is changing to a pointer kind of thing. So it is perfectly fine. Now let's define the required code for the hover section. So here we need to write down hover, and when the user will bring the cursor over this button, I would like the background color, the opacity to change. So opacity 0.7. Let's check out what are we going to get is an output. Okay, so as you can see, the opacity is changing. Fine, so done with defining the required code for the hover property also. Now let's define the code for customizing the appearance of this division section, for which the class name is column. Okay, so dot col, this is how we can access the class, and then I would like everything to float on the left side. This is the first thing that I would like to see, and then we can define a width of 50%. Why I'm defining 50% for this width section? Because this thing, these three buttons are coming in this area, and the rest of the area is being covered by this OR button and these input boxes and this button. That is the reason I'm dividing. This is a way of dividing a particular section into two or more different sections. So width for this, each column is going to have this width of 50%, and then margin. So I would like to have this value auto for this margin thing. Let's define something for the padding also. So 0 by 50 pixels for the padding, and then we can have some gap in between the content of this column and the top border. So margin top you guys can make use of, and let's have a gap of 6 pixels. So now when you'll refresh the stage area, this is what you will get to see as an output. So now they are aligned in two different columns. Column wise we are able to see these three buttons and these input boxes and all the components getting reflected over here. Okay, now let's define the code for this sign up and forgot section. So what we can do, we can make use of this property after, which is going to create the pseudo elements for us. If you don't know about it, please check out the previous lectures. Definitely you will get to know better about this after keyword, which helps us in creating pseudo elements. Fine, so I don't want to see any kind of content getting reflected over here. That is the reason passed a null. That is the reason I have passed a null value for this content property. Let's pass something for this display. I would like to see a table kind of display. Fine, and then let's clear everything. So passing this both value for this clear section. Now when you'll enlarge the size of this window, so this is what you will get to see. This sign up is coming over here below these buttons, and forgot password is coming over here below these components, right? Now we have one more class named v1, right, which we have defined for this span section, in which this or thing is coming. If the user will shrink the size of the window or sign in manually, is going to appear on this window. Fine. And if he will enlarge the size, or if he will access this web page on his desktop, so automatically it will change to or. Now how to get this kind of output? What we can do, we can make use of this class named v1. Fine. And position, I would like to see it on an absolute position, and besides I would like to see it somewhere in between these buttons and these components. So how can we get this kind of output? We can shift it 50% to the left side of this window by passing this value left 50% for this left property. So this is what you are going to see as get as an output now. So or is coming right in between these components and these components over here. Fine. Now we are going to define something for the border. So I would like to have a border, a solid border of 2 pixels. That's how we can do it, right? And then we can define some color also for this border. So this is what you will get to see as an output. And let's define a height also for this section. So I would like to have a height of 175 pixels. So now as you can see, this or is getting reflected like this over here. The way it is originally getting reflected on this, this beautiful web page which we are trying to create right now. Great. So we are done with defining the required code for this v1 class. Let's now define the code for this class named inner that we defined for. Just a second, let me show it to you. So here we define this h1 tag for this Geeks for Geeks, and then we define this v1. Okay, and after that, where is that inner class? I am trying to find that. Okay, so here are these two columns for these two things that we have right at the bottom. Fine. And then if we'll go up, so we have this inner text, v1 inner text for this or section, right? And what do we have for this sign in manually? We have this hide MD, right, for this sign in manually. Okay. Let's do one thing. Let's define the code for this hide MD class. Okay, so how to access the hide MD class? We can make use of this class like this, and initially I don't want to display it over here. If the person is accessing the website on a desktop, I don't want that this text which I've defined in between these division section to be visible to him. Now how can we make it go disappear? We guys can make use of this display property, and let's define this value none. So as you can see, now that text for which we have defined in between these two division sections, is now no more visible to us over here on this beautiful web page, right? Okay, now let's define the code for this class named bottom container, okay, which is containing these two text fields. So for accessing this class, we can copy the class name like this from here. Let's go back on the CSS file, and here I'm going to place a dot first, and after that I'm going to write down this name of the class, bottom container. Now the first thing that I would like to do is let's align the text. So I would like to align it in the center. That is the reason pass this center value for this text align property. Okay, and then there is some background which is visible to us over here. So what we can do for getting this the color code of this background color, what we or simply we can, it's a dark gray color which we are able to see over here in this footer section. So the color code of this dark color is 666. So you can just put a hashtag and then write down 3 times 6 like this. So now this is what you will get as an output. Now you can change the color of the text from here. Let's replace it with white. So now the sign up and forgot passwords, these two buttons are going to get reflected in white like this. Beautiful. Let's now define some border radius also for these two things. So I would like to have a border radius of 0 pixel, then 4 pixel, 4 pixel. So now when you refresh the window, this is what you will get to see. So these borders over here are now round in shape. Okay, now when I am shrinking, let's open this up on a bigger window first. So this is how at present our web page is looking like. Now if I will shrink this window, so this is what is happening. I want to see it getting aligned the way the things are getting aligned over here on this original web page. Now if you want to make your web page mobile responsive, there is a simple property you can make use of. The name of that property is media, and then you can use this screen keyword for controlling the screen. So maximum width, so this is the width of the mobile screen, 650 pixels you can define over here, and inside these two curly brackets we are going to define the CSS code now for customizing the appearance of the website in such a way that we can make it mobile responsive. So the first thing that I would like to customize is the things which are coming inside this class name call. So width, I would like the buttons to cover the entire width. So that is the reason passing this 100% value for this width section. Let's now pass something for the margin top. So I don't want to see any kind of gap in between the components and the top border. That is the reason pass this 0 value. Okay, so I'm done with defining the required code for this column class. Let's now define the code for this v1 class. So I don't want to see this text, this or text, if it is a mobile view. So for that we guys can make use of this none property. Fine, and now we guys can copy this whole code and place it inside this media screen. So if the person is accessing this page on a mobile, I would like that person to see this or sign in manually getting reflected on the web page. So for that we can pass this value block for this display property, and then I would like to align it in the center. So with the help of text align property, we can easily do it. Okay, so we are able to get the required output. Let me just show it to you on a bigger window. So this is what the web page is looking like. Why we are able to why this is not visible to us in white? Here it is coming in white, but why it is not coming over there in white? Let's check it out. If I'm shrinking the size, so this is how the web page is looking, and if I am enlarging the size, enlarging the window, so this is how the web page is looking like. Okay, and why is this coming in blue? Let's check out the code if we have missed something over here. So style color white. This one is perfectly fine. Now what have we defined for this division? So the color is white. This is perfectly fine. Column, okay, color is white. Fine. Okay, so this text align property, this should be center, right? The name of the value was not correct. I think now we'll be able to get the correct output. So here if I'm enlarging the window, here I'm able to see it in white, right? So this is perfectly fine, no problem. And if I am shrinking the size of the window, so this is what I am getting is an output. Now, the only difference between this original web page and this one is that the size of these buttons over here is small as in comparison to the size of these buttons which you are able to see over here. Now what we can do, we can make use of one more class with name dot inner, and let's define the required CSS code for this class. So I would like to have this position absolute first, then we can from the top I would like to see the whole content at this much of gap, 50%. Let's define a background color also. Okay, so hashtag F1 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 is a back color. Then we can have border to 1 pixel solid border I would like to have of this color. Okay, and then let's define some padding too. So 8 pixel by let's say 10 pixel. Okay, so right now this is what we are getting as an output. Now how to enlarge the size of these buttons? Let's go back on this HTML document, and we have defined these anchor tags and these input buttons and this login button over here inside this division section with name container. Okay, and then if we'll come down, we have a form, and then there is one more division section with name row, right? Okay, so how to customize the appearance of the where is that btn class? So this is the one which is actually we have defined for these buttons over here, and these are the CSS codes which are actually customizing the appearance of these buttons. right? So width we have defined 100% padding, border radius 4 pixel, this is perfectly fine. Margin is also there. Okay, then text decoration line height is 20 pixel, font size. Okay, I don't want to have any kind of border, so that is the reason defining this value none for the border property. We haven't defined anything for the text size, right? Let's do one thing. If I'll change it to 34 pixel, okay, now this is not going to give us the correct output. This is perfectly fine, so everything is perfectly fine. The only issue that I'm facing is with the size of these buttons, right? We need to I want to see them like this, the way they are getting reflected over here on this final web page. Let's do one thing. Let's first customize appearance of this Geeks for Geeks. So for customizing the appearance of this Geeks for Geeks, we can make use of this H1 selector, because we have defined this Geeks for Geeks in between the H1 tags, right? That's how you can access the H1 tag over here on the CSS file. And now we can have some font size of, let's have a font size of 100 pixels. I think this is going to work for us. And then margin, we can define some margin in the bottom side. So I would like to have a margin of 20 pixels. If you'll refresh this window, this is what you will get to see. Okay, now as soon as the user will shrink the window, I would like the size of this Geeks for Geeks also to go down. So for doing that, we can come down over here, and we guys can define something for this H1 selector field. So as soon as the user will shrink the window, or will try to, if he is accessing the web page on a mobile screen, so I would like the font size of this text to go down to 50 pixels. So this is what you will get to see now. Fine, so it is perfectly fitting into this beautiful window. So I think everything is perfectly fine now. The only thing that we are missing is the size of these buttons. How can we enlarge the size? Okay, so we have these anchor tags in between this division. Okay, and what is the code that we have defined for this anchor tag? Let's check it out. Where is that anchor tag? Let's do one thing. Let's access these anchor tags. Now how to do that? How to access the anchor tags? What we can do, the class that we have defined for these anchor tags, the class name is also different. Okay, so we have this btn class for these three anchor tags, fine. And then for this input box and for this button over here, we have this class column. Okay. Submit user, this is perfectly fine. I think we can make use of this section to enlarge the size of these uh, boxes, and let's make use of this padding property. So if I will make it 5 pixels. Okay, so now it is perfectly fine. So that's how you can enlarge the size. You just have to make use of the padding property for defining some space in between the text and the border of this box. Okay, so this is what we are going to get as an output finally, and it is a mobile responsive web page that we have developed. Fine. Now if you want to add some animation to this web page and make it more interactive and interesting for the user, now how can you do that thing? So it's very simple. You guys can make use of @keyframes. So I'm going to make use of this @keyframes right on the top, and then we can define the name of some animation. Let's have an animation with name change. So I would like the background of this to change continuously. So for 0% we are going to have a background color of, let's say, aqua. Let's copy this whole thing and place it over here, and after some time, so you can just change the percentage to 30 or 40. It totally depends upon you what is the percentage you want to define. So after some time I would like to see the color to change to brown. Then we can copy this whole thing and place it over here. Let's change it to 50, and after some time we would like to see the color to change to this, and then after some time I would like the color to change to crimson. Fine. And finally at 100% I would like the background color to change to uh, let's make use of yellow color. I think yellow is going to be a good option. Okay, yellow. Fine. Now how to apply this animation name change on this header tag? So what you guys can do, you guys can come inside this header tag, and then you can make use of this animation keyword. Fine. And then you can define change, and after how much time you want to see the change getting reflected. So I would like to see the change getting reflected after every 3 seconds, and if you want to see it getting reflected infinitely, so you can define this value infinite, and then because it is taking place along the x-axis, so linear is also what you have to pass. Now when you'll refresh this window, this is what you are going to get as an output. See, the background color of Geeks for Geeks is changing. Now if you want to apply it on the whole body section, you can write down body, and inside this body you can cut this code from here and paste it over here. So now this is what you are going to get as an output. See how beautiful the page is looking now. Fine. So that's how you can design an interactive, a very beautiful social media login page. Hope you guys enjoyed this lecture a lot. Do like and share the link of this video in your group so that it can reach to the maximum students possible. Thank you very much for joining me in this lecture. Have a great day. Bye.